We are going to continue to talk about weather today and read about weather. And we're going to be reading the text When Rain Falls by Melissa Stewart, and it's illustrated by Constance R. Burgum. And I want to draw your attention to the way that the author and illustrator is written. It's written in what is called italics. And italics means that the letters are slanted and it alerts the readers to pay careful attention. And I've included an example here. I've written kindergarten or typed kindergarten without italics, and then underneath it, I typed it with italics. And you can see how the letters are slanted, and it draws your eyes to it to make sure that you're paying attention. I also want to talk about informational text before we get started, because that's what we're going to read today. And we've read all kinds of different genres. We've read fairy tales and folk tales and poetry and biographies and informational texts. And we've even read some nonfiction and some fantasy text. Well, this text is an informational text, and it has certain features. Like an informational text is about real people and real animals and real places and real events. Informational texts contain facts that can be checked in another source. It might use features like diagrams or photos or illustrations, and it presents the information in a clear way. And we're going to come back and we're going to revisit this after we read to see if our selection has any of these elements of an informational text. As you're reading, your essential question today is, what do animals do during a rainstorm? What do animals do during a rainstorm? So let's go ahead and start reading When Rain Falls. Inside clouds, water droplets fudge and bump, crash and clump. The drops grow larger and larger, heavier and heavier, until they fall to the earth. When rain falls in your neighborhood, you run inside and wait for the storm to end. Now, for our comprehension strategy that we're going to use, we're going to do predicting and confirming predictions, and we're also going to do a little summarizing with this text. And I think this is a good time to stop and make a prediction, because when you make and confirm predictions, it allows the reader to summarize what's been read so far and to identify clues and events in the text, and also use what you know about from your own personal experience to make an inference about what would happen next. So, I'm going to predict that the author is going to talk about how the weather affects the children, and that the story will tell what the children will do as they wait for the storm to end. Maybe they'll play a game or they'll read a book. That's what I would do if I was waiting for the rain to stop. I'm going to keep reading so I can check if my prediction is correct. When rain falls in a forest, scurrying squirrels suddenly stop. They pull their long, bushy tails over their heads like umbrellas. A hawk puffs out its feathers to keep water out and warmth in. Chickadees stay warm and dry inside their tree hole homes. I'm going to check my prediction from time to time as I read, and the author is now talking about what some animals do in a rainstorm, and there's no mention of the children. The author didn't tell what the children are doing. I'm going to keep reading to see if my prediction is confirmed later in the text. A doe and fawn take cover under a leafy tree canopy. A red fox family nestles in a warm, cozy den. When rain falls on a field, plump little caterpillars crawl under leaves and cling to stems. Adult butterflies dangle from brightly colored flower heads. Now, this is a good time to use my summarizing strategy. Now, when I summarize something, that means that I check my understanding as I read, and I focus my mind on the important information and the key details. And if there's something that I don't understand, I can go back and reread that part. Well, when I look here, I think that the author starts to talk about a new place where rain falls, because on pages 24 to 26, she's talking about rain falling in the forest, and then changes to a field on page 27. When it rains in a forest, a squirrel uses its tail as an umbrella, a hawk puffs out its feathers, Chickadees hide in a tree. The deer hide under a tree, and a red fox family stays in a den. So that's what happens when rain falls in the forest. And now she's talking about where rain falls, what happens when rain falls on a field. So I will keep reading to find out more. A raindrop knocks a ladybug off a slippery stem. The insect bounces into the air and then tumbles to the ground. A spider watches and waits as the rain beats down on its carefully built web. A mouse crouches under a fallen leaf. Bees hide in hives, and ants stay safe in their underground nests. When rain falls in a wetland, turtles tuck in their tiny heads. Rain splatters against their hard, strong shells. A dragonfly swoops down to perch below a fluffy cattail seed head. Whirligig beetles swim in circles and struggle to stay afloat. Oh, the author begins to give more different information here. Now she's talking about when rain falls in a wetland. And that starts on page 31. So this is a good time to summarize the information about the animals in the field that happened on page 27 and 30. When it rains on a field, remember, caterpillars and butterflies hang on the plants, a ladybug falls to the ground, a spider waits, a mouse stays under a leaf, and bees stay in their hive, and ants stay in their nests. Sparrows huddle deep inside a dense cluster of leafy bushes, but ducks continue to cruise through the water. Raindrops slide right off their oily feathers. When rain falls in a desert, oh, now I'm going to stop right here because I noticed something happening again. She was talking before about when the rain falls in a wetland, and now she switched to where rain falls in a desert. So this is a good time to stop and summarize again about what happens in a wetland when it rains. Turtles tuck their heads into their shells. Dragonfly sits on a cattail. Beetles try to float. Sparrows stay hidden in trees. And ducks swim in the water. So now I can keep reading about what happens when rain falls in a desert. A rattlesnake squeezes into a rocky crevice. It curls up tight and falls asleep. A tarantula scuttles into an underground tunnel. Bats hang silently in a hillside cave. An elf owl takes cover in a cactus nest. Spadefoot toads dig to the surface. They lay eggs and then burrow back into the sand. When the rain stops, animals living in fields and forests, wetlands and deserts return to their daily routine. And so do you. Oh, now I will check my prediction now that I'm at the end of the text. The author never did mention exactly what the children did when it was raining. My prediction didn't happen, but I think it was more interesting to find out what the animals were doing when in the rainstorm. So before I let you go, I do want to stop and talk about the genre and go back to this informational text. Now, an informational text is about real people, animals, places, or events. And this was definitely about real animals in real places, right? An informational text contains facts that can be checked by another source. And there's animals and the places they live. Those are definitely facts. And you can check these facts by looking in other books about animals. An informational text might use diagrams, photos, or illustrations, and this one used illustrations. And information is presented in a clear way. And I do think that that's the way that she presented this was very clear because she said she kept beginning with the words, when rain falls in the wetlands, when rain falls in the forest, when rain falls in the desert. So she's clearly telling you where she's talking about and what she's talking about. Now, there are some vocabulary words that I want to bring to your attention. Let me go back to our story. On the very first page is our very first word, and it's the word clump. And you can see that our vocabulary words are always highlighted in that yellow. And clump means to gather in a group. So let me play.
Clump. To gather in a group. I clump snow together to make a snowball.
So in the example, she clumped the snow together to make a snowball. And I kind of picture drops of water clumping together and getting bigger and bigger and then falling as rain inside that cloud. That's what I think of when I see that word clump in the story. Inside clouds, water droplets budge and bump, crash, and clump. Let's find our next vocabulary word. There it is. There's the word dangle.
Dangle. To hang or swing loosely. I dangle from the monkey bars. I almost fall off. Dangle.
Right. So to dangle means to hang or swing loosely. And in the example, that little boy was going to dangle from the monkey bars. But in our story, the adult butterflies dangle from brightly colored flower heads. They're hanging from brightly colored flower heads. One more word. Here's the word struggle.
Struggle. To make a great effort. I struggle with tying my shoes. I have a hard time.
All right, struggle means to make a great effort, to make a great effort. And in that example, they were struggling to tie their shoes. But in this one, whirligig beetles swim in circles and struggle to stay afloat. And I kind of picture in my mind them getting hit with the drops of rain and all the effort it would take for them to stay on the water, to struggle to stay afloat. I will include some discussion starters in your assignment today so that you can talk about those things with your big person. And I will also include your vocabulary words and the definitions.